Alright, so I kind of want to talk about some interesting points from the Lowkey versus Damwon series and sort of talk about Damwon as a whole as well. So let's get into it. So the lane swap, which is probably the most interesting thing from the series. So why did the lane swap work? So first off, it capitalizes on the tendencies of Naguri. So Naguri likes to do cheesy things like starting call, using klepto, buying gold per 10 item. So these are all for the fact that he picks scaling carry type champions. So these kind of champions require time, money, and gold, or sorry, time, money, and XP to be effective. So in order to bridge this gap between the early game and the late game and getting there quicker, he'll do efficient build paths like buying the support item, which is efficient in terms of getting cooldown reduction as well as generating gold for later. And then he'll also start call, which is a good gold efficient item that's going to help, that's going to boost his economy, as well as running the klepto, which gets him extra gold. So all of these things are very greedy. He does this because he thinks he's so much stronger as a top laner. He doesn't really need the combat stats in the 1v1. But in a lane swap, he's not going to be in a 1v1. He's going to be in an unfair scenario. And these sort of these masteries and items that he chooses are not going to be as effective if he's facing a dive, which is exactly what happens. He has low combat stats and he gets dove and dies. The second thing is the Garen and the Yuumi. So the thing about Yuumi is she is a really strong champion at picking and team fighting, but she really can't roam very well. She's a really squishy, low mobility champion. You don't really want to pick up boots. You just want to skip the boots, move on to other items, because you can just simply jump on somebody else who has faster movement speed, and you have that problem solved. So if the Yuumi wants to roam, he has to go with the Garen. But in a lane swap, the Garen's going to be wanting to push a tower, so she has to stay with the Garen in order to properly be safe. So the second thing is Garen and Yuumi are not as fast at pushing towers as Tristana is. Tristana has insane turret push with her E and demolish. It's quickly able to even solo towers, doesn't even need the support of, well, doesn't need the support to take down the towers. So this is what we see in the series. The Tristana is able to get tower top lane, then go to bot lane, get the tower plating, then go mid lane and get the tower plating. So the Tristana was able to get all 15 plates, not solo plates, but almost all 15 plates by herself. Likely this is the best case scenario due to the fact that Damwon is not practiced in this lane swap scenario, so they sort of maybe botched the lane assignments a little bit. But Tristana is another key point in this lane swap. The next thing is the Ornn. So while Damwon locked in Vladimir, expecting a normal 1v1, Lowkey locked in the Ornn. This was also kind of a bait because Nuguri thinks he's going against an Ornn, which is going to be a free laning phase, so he uses klepto, starts calls, stuff like that. While in fact the Ornn was going to be playing the weak side of the map. So the thing about Ornn is he's much better on low gold and low econ than Vladimir is ever going to be. Just for the fact that Ornn's just going to be effective with levels and just a small amount of CS, because the Ornn is always going to be effective with his ultimate, always going to be able to get off CC. As he levels up, he's going to get his passive upgrades, which are just going to be, he doesn't need gold to be effective, essentially. So that's why it's possible for you to see an Ornn support, but you never see a Vladimir support, because Ornn has CC, he has utility for the team. And yeah, so I think those are the main points why this lane swap worked and why it threw Damwon off guard. The second thing would be the pike pick in game 2. So, much like MSI, one of the OP flex picks is Renekton, which wasn't the champion that was OP at MSI, but the champion that filled a similar role would be the Jace. So Jace was pick man at MSI, and part of the reason was that Jace, like Renekton, would allow a team to play heavily towards the top side of the map. So what they would do is they would pick a early game jungler that's a strong early game jungler. So in Renekton's case, you'd pick the Talia or you'd pick the Elise, and then you'd go for an early invade, and you would want to split the map. So the Renekton being on the top side of the map, and then your bottom lane being on the weak side of the map. So this allows Renekton to easily bully out the other lane opponent. Similarly, Jace would easily bully out the lane opponent because of the range advantage. But Renekton also has the support of the jungler, because the jungler is on the top side of the map. They know that the enemy jungler is on the bottom side of the map, so in threat of getting ganked, the enemy top laner has to play back. And then on top of that, Renekton is a very strong early game champion with his stun. So Renekton's going to be able to get the push. He's going to build up a slow push towards the enemy turret, and once there's a bunch of minions and it hits the tower, the Talia or the Elise is going to look to dive the enemy laner, and that's going to allow the Renekton to get super far ahead. The other laner going to lose out on CS, and hopefully they're going to use Renekton's early mid game power to snowball the game. So why Pike? So Pike, as one of the highest base armor values in the game at 45, I believe, so he's going to have even higher armor than something like an Alistar or a Garen. So this makes it a lot easier for the Pike to survive the laning phase. The Renekton's not going to be able to bully him as much just because of the super high armor value and armor scaling that he has. And the second point is he is a very slippery champion. So even if the Renekton engages with his stun, he's easily going to be able to E out, just quickly retreat, press the W, heal up, and then return back to lane. So it makes it hard for the Renekton to all in. And also in the typical dive that I was talking about, it's going to be hard for them to actually secure the kill. So like we saw in the game, Renekton was able to land the stun, but before the Talia was able to land the knockback, he quickly eased out and survives. So it's able to survive this seemingly impossible turret diving duo early game. And the second thing is, Pike can take an early CS deficit. So like we saw in the Jace matchup, he can survive the bullying because he has high armor value, and he can heal back the harass, and then but he's still going to be losing some CS just because the nature of Jace just being such a much stronger early game champion, Renekton also being a stronger early game champion. But where they make up for that is through the Pike passive ult, or the ult passive on Pike. So when Pike kills a champion or assists in killing a champion, he's going to be able to get the cut, which is his cut of the gold. So they're essentially going to be able to get double gold for a kill. So this is going to help them bridge the gap between the CS deficit between him and the Renekton. But it requires you to work well with your jungler and to be able to get effective roams off across the map. So it's a high execution pick. But that's exactly what we saw in the G2 versus SKT series. They picked it against the Jace. He was able to survive the early game with the Jace, and then he was able to roam mid lane and get kills there. So move on. So one interesting thing is the influence of G2 on Lowkey. So I'm pretty sure most of these strategies, maybe Lowkey changed them up a little bit, but I'm pretty sure most of them are influenced from G2. So Wonder tweeting out, while Lowkey has some pretty cool strats, I wonder who they scrimmed. So referring to the fact that they probably scrimmed G2 and they probably took some of their strategies. And then Grabs also was tweeting, I do hope for upsets of any kind. Some of you might want to see only the best play versus each other all the time, but having an underdog win can give their region confidence and inspiration. That might be a typo. But and they also said, cheering for Lowkey, our brothers, VCS fighting. So I definitely think G2 helped them out in the strategy department. So, and this definitely seems like something G2 would do. You saw in the finals of spring, they pulled out the funnel comp long after it was irrelevant, and that was against specifically the Sonoteric, which now they're also coming up with a strategy for the Garen Yuumi. And also the Pike pick is, stable G2, a triple flex for them, so definitely wanting to find a way to use Pike, and it's a pretty smart counter to the Renekton Talia / Elise. And also, I think this is just my conspiracy theory, but I think there's a Red Bull article talking about how they really think Damwon's a strong team. And then maybe them struggling in scrims against them. So they're like, yeah, try to help out Lowkey as much as possible. Give them an edge. Maybe they can upset them. We don't have to deal with them later. Maybe we just get to see an extra draft from Damwon, which is just another point they can work off of. But that's just a conspiracy theory that I have. Next is Damwon's playbook. So what did Damwon show, and what can we expect from Damwon in the future from the tournament? So one of the things that they showed was the Gragas Yasuo. This is something that was really, really important in the King Zone series as well. So I feel like this combo, if the enemy team plays the combo, is going to be very high priority, especially if it comes to a best of 5. So in this series they played the Gragas Yasuo, and they showed that they can both play at mid and bot. So Nuclear didn't have the best game on Yasuo, but it's just another option. He was sufficient with it, and it gives more flexibility in the draft. The next is the Renekton, which I talked about a little bit earlier. It's a flex pick. It's definitely Showmaker favored, but if it's a bad matchup, he's not going to take it, and he likes to take it into the melee champion, so take it into a Kiana or an Akali mid lane. Excuse me. And then, of course, pair it with a jungle like Talia or Elise, and then you're going to split the map, like I described earlier. They also showed that they can play Yuumi. So they played the Yuumi Garen bot lane they played it on red side. So Lowkey first picked the Gragas, and then they responded with Yuumi Akali. And they have shown that sometimes they will ban it even if they're on blue side, showing that they're not willing to first pick the Yuumi. They much preferred to get their the picks for the mid lane and the top lane, the OP flex picks. So if they respect your bot lane, they're definitely going to ban it on blue side. And they showed the ability to play Garen with it. They also played a game of Xayah with it. Yuumi doesn't seem to be a very high skill cap champion, so they can easily play it. Next, which I think is going to be another important pick throughout the whole series, a champion that's going to be tournament warping, is Kiana. So they can flex it between their mid and jungle, and they also showed that they can play the Kiana mid with the Talia jungle, and it's just an OP combo. You can send the Talia wall through the jungle, connect all the walls in the jungle, and just get a huge AoE stun throughout the entire jungle of the opponent's team. So the thing about Kiana and why this mid jungle flex is going to be so important, and it was good that they showed that they were able to pull it off, is Kiana does have a lot of weak mid lane matchups. So if you want to pick Kiana early on in the draft, you're going to have to, and you don't have this mid jungle flex, you're going to have to be, you're susceptible to getting counterpicked by something like a LeBlanc, which was Faker's preferred matchup and Jensen's preferred matchup in the summer playoffs. So if you aren't able to flex between the mid and jungle, it's just not going to be as effective. And then lastly, we find out more about Nuguri. Well, not more. We don't find out much. We just know, like, it clarifies what champions he's going to be playing. So he either likes something like a ranged bully. So he played the Kennen, he played the Jace, which are able to just freely lane, pressure tower, and then have a impact later on in the mid game. His second type of champions is the scaling OP champions. So he likes to play Vlad and Ryze, and he has played GP, but I'd say the Vlad and the Ryze are his main two. So in those two, he just looks to be as greedy as possible with the Vlad in particular, taking Kleptomancy, helping him to get to that late game status. And he also plays the Bruiser melees, or fighters, whatever you want to call them, in the Renekton, the Camille, and the Aurelia. His one game on Renekton wasn't as convincing. When he played against the Pyke, he had very low damage in that game. But anyway, that's sort of the Damwon playbook and what I think we can expect from Damwon. I'm not sure if they're holding anything back, but it seemed like they just were going all out in the draft, and this is what we can expect. And also another important thing is they definitely play Kali. It's definitely Showmaker favored, but Nuguri has played it in the past. Anything else? Damwon's definitely a top side favored team. The bot lane is fairly mediocre, and they realize that, and they don't give them any resources. But the good thing about the bot lane is they're very flexible. They play the sort of cheesy bot lanes. I'm pretty sure they played the Sono Kench in the past. They play the Garenimi, they play the Gragas Yasuo. So although not being the most hyper carry bot lane, Barrel's really good on Alistar, finding engages in flanks, and they're flexible. So moving on. So I kind of want to talk about Nuguri's stats throughout the play-ins. So one of the cool stats that they're talking about on the broadcast is the damage per minute difference, which is this column right here. So for Nuguri, he has an average of 288 damage per minute difference. So this is sort of a good indicator of how much you're mitigating your opponent. So whether that be through lane advantage or just how well you're able to play around the enemy laner in the fights, and how much better you are. So average, he would do 515 damage per minute top lane, while his opponent would only do 227, which is just a huge gap right here. He has a positive goal difference of 15 with 803. The only game, he only having 2 games where he had a negative goal difference at 15. CS difference at 15, only 1 game where it was negative, an average of 15 up at 15, which is very good. Percentage of the team's damage, he does around 25.8, so around 26% of the team's damage, which is very high for a top laner. And yeah, you definitely see that he is one of the main carries of the team. And next is the gold percent that he takes, and this is an adjusted gold percentage, so it factors out passive gold generation as well as starting gold. Passive gold generation being just the gold that you get over time throughout the game, not including any gold per 10 items. So the gold per 10 items are still factored into this. And then I like the GE refers to gold efficiency, which is a stat that I came up with. So it takes the ratio of the amount of damage you're doing, so the percentage damage share that you're doing divided by the gold percentage that you're taking. So I kind of call this gold effectiveness because it shows how effective you are with 1%. So say you take 1% of the team's gold, you're able to and then output 1.02% of the team's damage. So 1.0 being, looks like sort of a standard even So 1.02 is his gold effectiveness. So he's able to utilize his gold well. This is a fairly decent score for a top laner. So next, just moving on to Showmaker. Another good performing member of Damwon. The top side, like I said, is the star. They are the stars of the show. Damage per minute difference 152, still very high. Gold difference very high. CS difference, just like, these are the main things that you are going to expect from Damwon. They're just going to be able to get these laning advantages, and hopefully that translates into a better ability to team fight late game. He does 23.56% of the team's damage, and this is all stats from across just play-ins. And then he takes an average of 22.16% of the team's gold, giving him a gold effectiveness of 1.06, which is very good. So sort of the underperforming member for Damwon is definitely Nuclear. So Nuclear, as compared to his other laners, has a very small damage per minute difference. So even though he won almost every single game, the enemy, his enemy laner was able to do just about as much damage as him, only having a 39 damage per minute difference, which is, it's still a decent amount, but not as much as Nuguri and Showmaker. Gold difference, still having that positive gold difference, partially being a product of just being on the better team. His CSD at 15 is very low. This is a product also of the fact that Damwon does not give jungle pressure bot lane, so he has to play safe. Oh, and there are two separate statistics here. If there's the average for all of the games, which is the top line, and then there's the average adjusted, which is factoring out the Garen game, which it sort of skews the data a little bit, just because Garen is a lot different. He's pretty much a support champion, so I factored it out in the bottom line here, because you can see his stats for this are very bad, because you're just not taking as much gold in. Let's move on to damage percentage. Even with the Garen Yumi game factored out, he's only doing 21.9% of the team's damage, which is very, very low for an ADC. So the upper echelon of damage percentage would be somebody like Uzi doing like 31% of the team's damage, and he's just hard carrying the team. But Nuclear, he has to play the weak side of the map, doesn't get as many resources, and I believe he doesn't play as well as the other members of the team, so he has a low damage percentage. For example, this Yasuo game, which was game 3, I believe, of the Lowkey series, he's only doing 12.6% of the team's damage, so doing very little. And then contrasted, he's taking 26.2 or 3 essentially percent of the team's gold, so he's taking much more of the team's gold and not outputting as much damage. So his gold effectiveness rating is very low at 0.83, having a very bad Yasuo performance, having a gold effectiveness of only 0.5. Partially that's a product of Yasuo, in order to do damage, has to go in, but it's also a product of him just not playing the Yasuo as well. But yeah, 0.83 is very low. Benchmark, I believe the average across four of the major regions, being LMS, LCK, LEC, and LCS, was, I believe it's around like 1.04 or 5 was the average gold effectiveness for ADCs, so this is very, very, very low. So I think these stats sort of show exactly what Damwon's identity is and what everybody's been saying about Damwon. Top and mid focus, bot lane's a weak point. So if you're able to attack the bot lane and get advantages through the bot lane, then maybe you can beat Damwon. But the top side of the map, very OP. What Damwon's going to be playing for. But that's my last slide for Damwon, and yeah, thanks for watching.